Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Lisaan-ul-Qur'an, Easier Than English, Lesson 11, Part 2, in which we'll take a closer look at the pointing words. Demonstrative phrase, Murakkab Ishari. Before we go and study the Murakkab Ishari, the pointing phrase or demonstrative phrase, let's quickly review where we are as far as our course is concerned. Alhamdulillah, this is the map I introduced you right at the beginning of the course, and I said that's really the major points that you need to study. So far, by Allah's grace, we've had quite a good look at the descriptive phrase. So many different versions of it we've seen, alhamdulillah. We've also learned the possessive phrase in the last two lessons. Prior to that, we look at the prepositional phrase. Remember those words that are used in the Quran almost 13,000 times. And now, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start looking at the demonstrative phrase. So we've covered most of them. We've looked at the conjunction with wow, some examples of it, but we really haven't studied it in some detail. So we've got the jumla ismiya in some detail again. I've seen you so many different versions of it. Inshallah, there's a lot more to learn, of course. And jumla fi'liya, we just use some some examples to illustrate the Arab only. So this is where we are as far as a study is concerned. So in this lesson, inshallah, we are introducing you to the demonstrative phrase or the pointing phrase, which is very, very important. We looked at the pointing words in sentences. Now we're going to look here, inshallah. Again, we're going through this map. We're going to dig deep into it. And by the end of the first level, inshallah, you'll have a good overview of most of the parts, as well as at least the first 2 or 3 types of words we'll also introduce in some detail. To form the Murakkab Ishari, the demonstrative or the pointing phrase, is really easy in Arabic. Let's take a look at the example of the sentence first. We have هذه madrasatun. Again, you have no problem recognizing that this is definite, and we're going to say this is rafa because it does not change its ending, but because it's in the position of mubtada, it has to be rafa. Then we say madrasatun. Now again, I hope you can recognize that this is indefinite and also in the rafa. So again, repeating the same thing again and again, so sticks, inshallah. We have a structure sentence. But here we have something different. We have definite and we have rafa, but we also have here definite, but definite we use with al, and we have also rafa. This is your Murakkab Ishari. The first part is called Ismul-Isharati, the noun or pointing, and the second part is called Musharun ilayhi, thing that you point to. So forming the Murakkab Ishari is very, very easy in Arabic. 2 parts. The first part is the pointing word, the word that you're using for pointing to. هذا, هذه, ذلك, تلك, هؤلاء, أولئك. Those are the words you're going to be using mainly, inshallah, to form. The second is the noun, the ism that you are pointing to. Now, the noun that you are pointing to has to have al for it to be the Murakkab Ishari. And the 2 parts will agree with each other in the 4 properties. So in here, inshallah ta'ala, you can see in the second example, the properties are matching: masculine, masculine, singular, singular, feminine, feminine, singular, singular, dual, dual, or plural, plural, whatever it is, it needs to match. And if the noun that you're pointing to is in nasab, and the other one will be nasab, rafa, rafa, jar, jar. We'll look at that later, inshallah. But all the 4 properties will match similar to the descriptive phrase. Of course, in the descriptive phrase, you don't have the pointing word. That's the only difference. So please note these things. 2 parts, and inshallah ta'ala, the musharun ilayhi comes after the pointing word. That's quite an obvious point. And that's all you need to know about the musharun ilayhi, and it's relatively easy to form. You have the pointing word and a word beginning with al. And that's all you need to remember. The rest are just technicalities. In Arabic, instead of saying this, I want to say this teacher. I don't want to say this is a teacher. I want to say this teacher. And how do I do that in Arabic? Very easy. هذا, and the word for teacher is al-muallimu. This teacher. Pay attention, inshallah, begins with al. هذا المعلم, this teacher. Of course, that is not a sentence. What about this teacher? The Khabar will follow and give us more details. Now, if I want to say these teachers, I will say هؤلاء المعلمون. هؤلاء المعلمون. Again, you can see very easy, these teachers. So this teacher, هذا المعلم, هؤلاء المعلمون, these teachers. Now, as far as the feminine is concerned, exactly the same principle. هذه المعلمة. هذه المعلمة, which is this female teacher. And of course, the plural will be exactly the same pointing word. هؤلاء, and the word will be al-muallimatu. هؤلاء المعلمات. Again, these teachers. I'm not going to do dual much because there's no point, inshallah. So this will give you the practice that you need for pointing to near and forming demonstrative phrases. Remember again, pointing word followed by a word with al. For pointing to something far, that we already know. So I want to say that teacher. Please work it out. I'm sure you can. Say it before I show you on the screen. ذَلِكَ الْمُعَلِّمُ. ذَلِكَ الْمُعَلِّمُ. That teacher. Not that is a teacher, that teacher. And again, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُعَلِّمُونَ. Those teachers. I hope this is easy for you, inshallah. That teacher, female, will be تِلْكَ الْمُعَلِّمَةُ. And then we have أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُعَلِّمَاتُ. Again, very simple. All the four properties are matching, and we have the right one pointing to the right ism. Again, the gender and the number is matching. Please note those points, inshallah, and they're both definite, but the second one is with al. So what happens with broken plural? This is where the fun begins. Let's take a look. Now, the word door in Arabic is masculine. You should know that. If not, go back to lesson number 3. How do we work it out? Well, the word door does not belong to any of the categories of feminine, so it will be treated by default as masculine. Then we have the word darun. We have another word for house, which is baytun. The word baytun is masculine. The word darun is actually feminine. Why? Go back to lesson number 3. It falls under the miscellaneous category. So we have a masculine word and a feminine word. So to say this door in Arabic, I would say hadal babu. This door, not this is a door, this door. Now, if I wanted to say this house using the word dar, I would say hadihi daru. Hadihi daru. Hadihi. Why? Because it's feminine. So if I wanted to point to something far, I would say dhalika, that door, dhalika al-babu. But if I'm pointing to something far, which is feminine, I will use the word tilka al-daru, tilka daru, tilka daru, that house. So you can see what's going on here, very simple. But what do we do when we want to point to these doors? So these is a plural word. So which one do we use in Arabic? The word for doors in Arabic is with al will be al-abwabu. So the demonstrative pronoun I will use is hadihil abwabu. Why? Singular feminine. Why? Broken plural of non-aqil. And then again, these houses will be hadihid diyaru. Again, you can see here the feminine singular is used again to pointing to houses. And then again, far away, tilkal abwabu. Again, far away, tilka diyaru. Again, you can see very simple singular feminine in being used. So you can see here what's going on with broken plurals and the standard ones that you'll see already. So please note that, inshallah, very, very important point. And that's where the confusion happens. Slowly, inshallah, we'll get rid of confusion. Just get used to the idea that broken plural of non-aqil will be treated as singular feminine. But let me share with you one more example which might or might not confuse you. When you have a broken plural which belongs to aqil, aqil meaning human, jinns or angels. In Arabic, classical Arabic, it can be treated either as masculine or feminine. Take this example here, the word rusul. Rusul means messengers. Messengers plural. Okay? Ulaika rusulu, those messengers. Nothing wrong with that. Everything matching. But you can't say tilka rusulu, those messengers. So again, it's even more confusing, but inshallah, don't worry. I've given you this one because it is actually used in the Qur'an, and you'll find it in Surah Al-Baqarah. So please note that this can also happen. Now, in advanced grammar, you'll see they said there is something hidden in between and all of that stuff. We'll look at that later. But for now, please note, broken plurals, even of aqil, on some occasions, can be treated as singular feminine. And this is one of the beauty and the elegance of Qur'an and Arabic, classical Arabic, we'll look at later. But for now, please note that also. So some Quranic examples of the Murakkab Ishari, just a few examples, inshallah ta'ala, listed here. I'm sure you'll find some more as we study further. So we have first one, هَذَا النَّبِيُّ, this prophet. هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ, this Qur'an. تِلْكَ الْجَنَّةُ, that garden, or you can say a paradise. أُولَٰئِكَ الْأَحْزَابُ, those groups. Now the first one, I didn't say this is a prophet, this prophet. And I hope you can, from the English, you can easily recognize that these are all phrases. None of them are sentences. Why? Because they match the conditions I mentioned earlier of being a Murakkab Ishari. How to spot the difference between demonstrative phrase and sentences. We have two structures on the screen. I'm sure by now you can recognize them. The first one, هذا الولد. And then we have the second one, هذا ولد. I hope you can translate this by now. The first one means this boy. Second one, this is a boy. I hope you can see that walad means boy. So the first one is your Murakkab Ishari. It begins with al followed from a pointing word. So you've got your classic rules of forming the Murakkab Ishari. The second one, on the other hand, is definite followed by indefinite. Again, your classical conditions of being the basic sentence structure. So this one is your sentence and this one is your phrase. I hope you can recognize, and that's how you tell the difference. And this is why right at the beginning I mentioned we're going to go through this slowly. We're going to pick up the 4 properties, because without that really we cannot translate correctly. Now if you knew the meaning of both of these words and you didn't know this rule, you would not be able to translate correctly. Your translation would be incorrect. Why? Because you could not apply the rules. So in Arabic, the most important thing isn't just acquiring lots of vocabulary. That though that is important, it's more important for you to understand what's going on and how the words are joined. And this is a classic example of what I mentioned right at the stages of mapping, that we need to focus on recognizing structures, recognizing the 4 properties, particularly Arab and all the other properties, of course, and the conditions of forming the different types of phrases. One more example for you. ذَلِكَ بَيْتٌ. That is a house. ذَلِكَ الْبَيْتُ. That house. Again, I hope by now you can easily tell the difference between the two and translate correctly. We also had this, if you remember, when we did introduce the sentence structure and the descriptive phrase. I have on the first one, الطالب صالح. The student is pious. Very easy. Murakkab. This is a Murakkab Tam, complete construct Jumla Ismiya. But here we have the 4 properties matching. الطالب الصالح, the pious student, which is a phrase, not a sentence. Again, you can easily tell that the 4 properties are matching. And that's how you tell the differences between these 3 different types of structures here. We have 2 Jumla Ismiyas, and we have 1 Murakkab Ishari, and we have 1 Murakkab Tawsifi, a descriptive phrase. Please pay attention, inshallah ta'ala. Very soon you'll get familiar with this and you'll be able to do this without having to repeat all the basic rules again. It's all to do with practice. The demonstrative phrase cannot be Khabar. The demonstrative phrase can be a number of things, but it cannot be the Khabar of a sentence. I have 2 examples here. هذا البيت كبير. This house is big. هذه المدرسة جديدة. Again, I hope you can realize I'm matching the number and so on and so forth. And you can see there are 2 basic sentences here. In the first one, 2 words making up. هذا البيت is my mubtada. The same thing in the second one. هذه المدرسة again is my mubtada, and the khabar is in between. Khabar is after kabirun. I put is, and are in between. That's the basic rules I went through with you. So the Murakkab Ishari can be in the position of mubtada, but what it cannot be is khabar. If you remember again from previous lessons, I mentioned that the harf of jar and ism majroor, Murakkab Jari, cannot be mubtada. So you have now something which cannot be khabar, which is Murakkab Ishari. So please note that, inshallah, I can't give you an example of something that does not exist. Just note the fact that when you see it, it will not be khabar. It could be other things, but it will not be khabar. Pronouns of separation, damirul fasli. In Arabic, if I want to say this is a boy, you should be able to do this easily now. هذا waladun. If I want to say this boy, I would say هذا الولد. And we've done this quite a lot in detail now. So we have a sentence and we have a phrase. But if you pay attention to the English, I want to say now, this is the boy. This is the boy, which is a sentence. I want to say the sentence, this is the boy. So how do I say that in Arabic? Now, if I said this and I put the boy, it becomes a phrase. But I want to say this is the boy, a sentence. So how do I do that in Arabic? Of course, the word for this is hada and the boy is al-waladu. But how do I make that construct without making it confused with a phrase? So what happens in Arabic, in order to do that, we put a pronoun on separation in between. So this pronoun now comes in the middle and becomes هذا هو الولد, and you'll translate that into English as this is the boy. So please note the pronoun of separation. So you have your mubtada and the khabar, and the pronoun will come in between so that the confusion between this phrase and the sentence is avoided. So this is quite a lot used in the Quran, and we'll see examples of it. This is with the demonstrative. There are other occasions when the pronoun of separation does come. So please pay attention to this. هذا هو الولد is translated as this is the boy, and the pronoun in between is called the pronoun of separation. Let's take a look at Quranic example here. We have ذلك هو الفضل الكبير. Again, you can see here huwa in the middle, which is a pronoun, could mean he or it. ذلك means that, so we got the translation of that. And al-fadlul kabiru means the great bounty. Of course, you can easily tell the word bounty is being described by the word great, and therefore here the four properties are matching. But you could also note the word huwa really isn't translated in the translation. There isn't any need for it. But what it does, it actually also gives emphasis. So there's a lot of things lost in translation. Inshallah, once you learn the Arabic grammar, you're able to see it. What is being said here really, that is the great bounty, meaning whatever's been mentioned before is the great bounty. So there's a sense of emphasis here, which isn't really translated from Arabic to English. So this is your example of a pronoun of separation. ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْكَبِيرُ. That is the great bounty. Next example from the Quran. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. You can see here very easily the translation أُولَٰئِكَ, those. And then we have hum. This word is hum. Again, if you remember, it takes a dhamma because of the meeting of the two sukuns, which we've covered previously. Humul mu'minuna, humul mu'minuna. Again, the word hum is not really translated in the translation. So those are the believers, and the word haqqan here means truth. So those are the believers in truth. Again, some sense of emphasis is given using the word hum. So we're not saying those are the believers or those are believers. What we're saying is those are the believers. So emphasis on the believers part coming here. You can see it. Ulaika humul mu'minuna haqqan. You can see that, alhamdulillah, another example of the use of pronoun of separation. Last example we have is أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. You can see that from Surah Baqarah. I'm sure you know this ayah or you've come across it before. Well, let's look at the last part first. This is where our pronoun of separation is. وأولئك, and you can see those, and then hum al-muflihun. Again, you can see it is changed to humul muflihun because why? Because of the meeting of the two sukuns. Hum plus it begins with lam with sukun. You can't read it. Therefore, the meme takes a dhamma. Otherwise, it is hum, the one we already know. Huwa, huma, hum. If you remember that already, inshallah. So this is your pronoun of separation. If you look at the translation, it's not really translated. The meaning is wa ulaika, and those humul muflihun. It is they who are the successful, or those are the ones who are the successful ones. That kind of meaning is given. So let's quickly look at the first part. Since we've learned quite a bit of Arabic, we should be able to recognize. Ulaika, we know, is a pointing word, which we've learned in this lesson. Ala is now your harf of jar. I hope you can recognize that instantly. So this must be your ism majroor, because remember, they always come after each other. But hudan is a type of word that does not change its ending. So there's no kasra there or anything to indicate jar. It is as it is. So ala hudan is your murakkab jari, which you can absolutely recognize. So I'll call this one ism majroor. So those two parts together make your murakkab jari. I hope you can see that easily, inshallah. Next we have min. Min is also a harf of jar. Min. Harf of jar. Then we have the word rabbihim. What is rabbihim on its own as a structure? Rabbihim is mudaf mudaf ilayhi. Remember we did rabbuhu, and we said rabbahu, and then we said rabbihi, and then we had rabbihim. So because it has min in front, it becomes rabbin. But because it's joining to him or whom, it is changing the kasra. It's dropping one of the kasra and it becomes rabbi. And of course, because it's got a kasra before, instead of saying hum, you'll say him. So that's what this is. Mir rabbihim, a revision from what we have already done. So you have now your ism majroor. So you have two murakkab jaris in this construct, and then this part on its own is your mudaf and your mudaf ilayhi. So I hope, sorry about the scribble, that's the best I can do on the screen. So this is now explains what the structure is going to, what you've been practicing so far. Alhamdulillah, I hope all of that is relatively easy for you to pick up. So in every ayah now, in every line of Quran, you'll pick up something you already recognize, and then we're only on lesson number 11, alhamdulillah. So again, please note the pronoun of separation, not really translated into English, but it gives a sense of emphasis also, or strength to the meaning also. I'rab of the demonstrative phrase. We know that the Asmaa-ul-Isharah, the nouns of pointing, do not change. They're fixed in every circumstances. So for example, if I want to say in Arabic, this came, I saw this, I gave salam to this, how will I say that in Arabic? Ja'a hadha, ra'aytu hadha, sallamtu ala hadha. So in all three circumstances looks exactly the same. But because alhamdulillah we went through some development and we are now aware of how the I'rab works, we can say in the first instance with certainty that this is rafa. Why? Because it's coming as a doer after the verb. So it has to be rafa. In the second one, we know with certain certainty that this is nasab. Why? Because it is coming after the verb, and we know the doer here is already I saw. What did I see? Well, it has to be the object. So the object of seeing is hadha. In the third example, I have sallamtu ala hadha. It has to be jar. There is no option whatsoever, because after a harf of jar, the ism, the noun, will always be in jar status or majroor. So therefore, we can tell from context whether it is to be considered to be rafa, nasab, or jar. So ja'a hadha, ra'aytu hadha, sallamtu ala hadha. But instead of saying this came, I want to say this Muslim came. I saw this Muslim. I gave salam to this Muslim. Well, now you should be able to form this Muslim. So it will be, for the first one, Ja'a hadhal muslimu. Please note, the word Muslim now is showing the I'rab, which you can see very clearly, al-muslimu. Al-muslimu, which is here with a dhamma. Instead of saying this, I want to say, I saw this Muslim. So I will say, Ra'aytu hadhal. Consider what the ending should be. Al-muslima. Why? Because it is now fulfilling the condition of being an object. The entire phrase, hadhal muslima, which is your Murakkab Ishari, is now in the nasab status. So this is now displaying the nasab status. So you can see now here, this is how you tell the I'rab of the Murakkab Ishari. You look at the musharun ilayhi, the noun being pointing to, and you look at the I'rab of that, and then you look back, and you'll be able to understand what is the I'rab of the phrase itself. Sallamtu ala hadha, what should it be? Al-muslimi. Hadha al-muslimi. So very easily, rafa, nasab, and jar is very clearly indicated here. So you can see what is going on here. Alhamdulillah, I hope this is clear. This example will make things easy for us. Now I want to say, this pious Muslim came. Not this Muslim came, this pious Muslim. We know the word for pious, salihun. So what will I say here? As-salihu. So the entire construct will be Ja'a hadha al-muslimu as-salihu. And you can see that inshallah ta'ala here, the I'rab now is also on this, which is Muslimu. Now, why is the I'rab of this in the rafa? Well, this is now, these two words combined together are themselves a descriptive phrase, Murakkab Tawsifi. And remember the noun being described, which is here, and this is the noun that is doing the describing or a description, sifa. Sifa will copy whatever the I'rab is of the noun being described. Well, the noun being described in this case is doing the role of the doer. Therefore, it has to be rafa, and the other one will copy. And that's how you work it out, inshallah ta'ala. I hope this is making sense and how easy it is. So, ra'aytu hadha al-muslima, and then I will say as-saliha. Very easy, inshallah. Why? It's just simply copying the I'rab. And then lastly, of course, it will be as-salihi. Again, you can see the I'rab being copied. So in reality, when you look at a word and you see and you recognize that it's in jar status, you look at the word before it. And oh, it looks like a description of that word. Then you look at the noun being described and ask, why is this in jar status? And you'll find something before it. Here, of course, it is now a Murakkab Ishari. The whole thing is in jar status in the third example. So all it is doing is copying from this all the four properties, and this is getting its property from this word, which is getting its property from that word. And that's how really, really beautiful the language is, and it just follows a very simple systematic role. As long as you can follow it logically, inshallah ta'ala, in most cases, this is not complex at all. Now I want to say these came. Again, we'll simply say ja'a ha'ula'i. Of course, it doesn't change its i'rab, but we're going to say it is rafa. Why? Because it is fulfilling the role of being the doer in the sentence. But if I want to say these teachers came, I will say simply ha'ula'i, and then I will say al-mu'allimuna. Why? Because mu'allimuna is in the rafa, so you can see it is also in the rafa status. And of course, if I want to say these pious teachers came, as-salihuna, again you can see rafa. So what is going on here? It is now the whole phrase is playing the role of the doer of the sentence, and therefore all of it is in rafa, and that's how you can easily tell the i'rab of the structure itself. Of course, alhamdulillah, you already know by now, because of the al afterwards, that this is a phrase and not a sentence. Of course, if we did not have al, it will be a different structure. Let's move on. Ra'aytu, I saw these. It will be ra'aytu ha'ula'i, I saw these teachers. Al-mu'allimina. Why? It needs to be in the nasab. Again, if you go back to the Muslim table, you'll recognize why it is in nasab, because the nasab and jar is exactly the same. And then, of course, it'll be as-salihina, which is also in the nasab status. And then we have sallamtu ala, and it'll be ha'ula'i. The word ha'ula'i will not change, but the Murakkab Ishari second part, al-mu'allimina, and it will be as-salihina. And of course, we will say that this is in jar, this is in jar, and this is in jar status. So you can see how the i'rab is now understood. So when you are faced with the Murakkab Ishari, the first part, of course, will not have the indication, but you can easily tell from the noun that is being pointed to. So inshallah, I hope this is now deepening your understanding of how you do this. And as you go into the Quranic text itself, through practice, inshallah, this will become second nature. Demonstratives used with the idafa. We looked at the use of the demonstratives in idafa in the lessons with the idafa itself. This is again a review, just to remind you, because some students do find it quite complex. I also found it quite complexing when I first started learning. Now take the first example here. I have qalamu hamidin hadha. Now pay attention to the English. This pen of Hamid. So it's not a sentence. It's not a sentence. This pen of Hamid. Now what we have here, the word this is pointing to something. Now we have here qalamu Hamidin, which is your mudaf and your mudaf ilayhi. I hope that is very clear. There is no complexity here. We've done this before. The word hadha is actually pointing to the mudaf, i.e. the first part. Now let's look at the next example. This book of yours. This book of yours. The word this is pointing again to the word book, which is the mudaf. So we have our mudaf and we have our mudaf ilayhi. Kitabuka qalamu Hamidin. Of course, one is with pronoun, the other one is a noun. Both are mudaf ilayhi. So in order to understand this, the question you need to ask is, where is the word this or the pointing word pointing to? And again, you'll see in both cases, it's pointing to the mudaf. So we have here the hadha, which is your Ismul-Isharah, and it's actually pointing to the pen. And therefore, in that case, the pointing word needs to come to the end. And this is how simply to remember it. So if the musharun ilayhi is mudaf, meaning the thing that is being pointed to is mudaf, then the Ismul-Isharah will come at the end, which is exactly what we have here also. So this book of yours, you make the idafa first and you put the pointing word after. Once you've seen a few examples, inshallah, you'll get used to it. Now, on the other hand, if the pointing word is pointing to the mudaf ilayhi, then what will happen in the construct? What will happen? We'll get a slight change in the construct, but it will become, the word hadha will become the mudaf ilayhi, which will then be the pointing word. So let's look at the first one. This man's house. The one I'm pointing to is the man. So this man, you can see that very easily from the English translation. So it will be Baytu hadha rajuli. So you have the word Baytu, which is again your mudaf. Hadha is going to be a mudaf ilayhi because there's nothing allowed in between. And of course, ar-rajulu is the one being pointing to. So Ismul-Isharah musharun ilayhi, which again can be said to be also a Murakkab Ishari. I hope this is not complicating too much, but just pay attention to what is being pointed to. If the pointing is being done to the mudaf ilayhi, then of course you can put the hadha in this case in the middle. The same thing we have with qalamu hadhil binti, this girl's pen. The word this is pointing to the pen, and girl's pen itself is of course a mudaf ilayhi. So you have the hadha coming in the middle. So this is your mudaf and this is your mudaf ilayhi. I hope you can see that also in the two different structure. So in summary, if the musharun ilayhi is pointing to the mudaf ilayhi, then it can come after the mudaf, which in this case will become the ismul ishara. So please again, just make a note of these. When we see it few times, this will also make sense to us. Other forms of demonstratives used in the Quran. We've already seen the word dhalika, which we know means that, T-H-A-T. But in the Quran, you'll also find dhaliki and dhalikuma, dhalikum, dhalikunna, and dha. We'll also find tilka, which we already know, which means that, feminine. But it also could be, you could find tilkuma, tilkum. We have ulaika and we have ulaikum. Again, you can see there's some changes going on in the end. Are these different words or are they similar in their meaning? So this is what we're going to look at here, the variations of the demonstratives. So these are rarely used, but they are there in the Quran. We need to understand how it is used in classical Arabic. Let's take a look at dhalika, which is the most common form. Dhalika in Arabic is actually not one word, it's made up of three words. The Arabic grammarians, they divide into three. The word dha on its own is the thing that is the demonstrative. It's the actual pointing word itself. Lam indicates distance. Distance. Okay, and it has a grammatical name. And also the ka indicates the person that you are speaking to. So let me explain this. Imagine I'm standing next to you and I'm pointing to some on top of a hill somewhere. I'm going to say, that is a mosque. That is a mosque. So that's taking care of that. The lam is for far away. Ka is I'm speaking to you. That ka is similar to the ka that we've seen. Remember? Rabbuka, kitabuka, laka, that ka, you. That is that meaning there. So again, I'm talking to one person, I use dhalika. Now imagine I'm speaking to a female person, I will say dhaliki. And that's exactly what is going on here. Dhaliki, I'm talking to a female person. If I'm talking to two people, I will use dhalikuma. I'm still pointing to one thing, but I'm talking to two of you. That will be dhalikuma. I'll talk to you that way, that is a mosque. I'll use dhalikuma. And again, if I'm talking to a group of you, it will become dhalikum. Dhalikum, or you, pointing to one thing. All of you are here with me. I'm pointing to something far away. The same thing with kunna. If I'm talking to a group of female. If I don't want to indicate anything, just say the word that, then I can also use the. Now, these are all used in the Quran. I've taken examples from. They all mean exactly the same as dhalika. There is no translation difference. In brackets, maybe the translators can give us detail, but in reality, these words all will be translated as that. But when you know Arabic, inshallah, you can see how much detail is in the context of the words. And this is the amazing beauty of the language. You can tell just by the choice of words, how many is the person I'm speaking to while pointing. To one person, I'm pointing for one person, two, four, are they male, are they female, etc. All from the variations of the word. And that yields a lot more extra meaning, inshallah, which you will see as we go into the advanced study. This is a bit advanced, but I wanted to share this with you. So please note here, dhalika, dhaliki, dhalikuma, dhalikum, dhalikunna, dha. They're all the same. In basic translation, you see it as that, but of course, there's a lot more detail in the word. Now, inshallah, you know what the endings mean. Similar exact is the case with tilka, of course, is feminine. Tilka, one person, tilkuma, tilkum. These are the ones I found in the Quran. Ulaika, again, exactly the same. Ulaikum, and again, exactly the same. The kum indicate that I'm talking to a group of people and pointing to lots of things at the end. So just all it is, again, you'll see that in the translation only be that meaning. Unless you read tafsir and so on, you will not get this kind of detail just from the translation itself, because in English, it is not necessary to translate so much detail. So here are two examples from the Quran just to show you that these are there. You have here Surah 61, ayah number 11, ذَلِكُمْ, and you also have Surah number 12, ayah 37, ذَلِكُمَا. ذَلِكُمْ is quite often used in the Quran. ذَلِكُمَا is not as often used in the Quran. So please note, these are examples you'll see in the Quran. You don't really need to memorize them. If you just know basically that the ka means the person I'm speaking to while pointing, then you can work the rest out yourself, inshallah. That's it on the second part, brothers and sisters, of lesson number 11. Again, the purpose of it was to introduce the subject, cover all the most important grammatical issues related to it, and look at the most common types of words and how they're used. Primarily, the use of these are simple, either in a sentence format or in a Murakkab Ishari. The other things with pronouns of separation and other complexities we can look at later. They can be mubtada, but please note they cannot be khabar. So please note that, inshallah ta'ala, also in your notes. And again, inshallah, when the opportunity comes, we will practice. And when you see it in the Quran text and you break it down ayah by ayah, that's when the knowledge will stick, especially if you practice with a text that you already know. So if you memorize, for example, the last 10 surahs of Quran, or if you memorize the last juz, or even say the first 2 pages of Surah Al-Baqarah, study those first and try to learn the words and try to see what's going on, inshallah, and you'll see the fruits of your labor. And at the end of the day, we're on a journey here. We're not looking for destination. We're only looking for the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. And we want Allah Azza wa Jal to be pleased with us. We want to understand His book when we stand for Salah at Fajr, at Maghrib, at Isha in the masjid, and the Imam is reciting. Or Allah grant us tawfiq, inshallah, next year. Hopefully the coronavirus situation will be gone by Allah's mercy, and we can pray Taraweeh in the masjid, and we can hear the whole Quran being recited. And wouldn't it be a great thing that if you study from now until Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, you and I will be able to understand what is being recited in the Quran or from the Quran by our Imams. Or even on Friday, every Friday you go, the Imam will be reading or reciting the Quran to us in the Salah itself, along with within the khutbah itself. So this is what we want to achieve. We want to be connected to the book of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, bless you for taking part in the lessons. I hope and pray, inshallah ta'ala, the lessons have been of benefit. And I hope and pray, inshallah ta'ala, that you are learning. Please do give us feedback, any positive, any negative, even criticism. Inshallah, let us know. All we want to do is improve the lessons for all the benefit of the ummah. Inshallah, do share it with all your friends and contacts. Until the next lesson, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. الذي علم بالقلم